us to talk about desperation. As I always reinforce to our confirmands, you're not going to be enthusiastic about the good news until you understand the bad news. You're not going to understand the significance of the coming of Jesus until you understand how that coming saves us. And that God goes with us in all the peaks and the valleys, in all of our desperation. And so it's fitting that Advent begins in desperation. Prophet Isaiah spoke these words because he lived in a world as an 8th century BC prophet who lived with economic inequality and military domination. The world hasn't changed a whole lot. You would wonder how hopeful Isaiah would be in our own day. The book of Isaiah in the Old Testament has been called the fifth gospel because of the way it shaped the life and the thinking of Jesus and the telling of the Gospels. And in this text, we find people living in the presence of swords and spears, nations in dispute with one another, and people training their children for war. The Latin word desperate is a combination of two words. Desperate, desperare, which means that we do not have hope. That's the meaning of the word desperate. So we talk in our world to depose, to deflate. Could we also talk about life in the world as de-hoping? Your parents might warn you sometime. Be careful, you could de-hope someone with those words. You have to be careful because you could de-hope someone with your actions. Now, we don't want to de-hope anyone here today. We want to re-hope you. We don't want you to be stuck in the bad news because we know the bad news in the world. We heard it this morning before we came to church. We may have heard it from a family member. We may have heard it from someone on the radio talking about current news. But we have been de-hoped by the world. And so when we come together, we come to re-hope one another. To know that there are things that we can do, and there are places that we can go where we can find hope. And I want to tell you this, in your personal life, in your family, in your business, in whatever area of your life you might be thinking of today that you've lost hope. That if you don't have hope today, then you need to know that something has to change. And that's God's way of telling us that something is not right in the world when we lose hope. Some of you may be fans of Kurt Vonnegut. He's got a great novel called Cat's Cradle. And in it he has a lot of fanciful things, but he creates his own religion in it. He creates Bokanon, and in the 14th book of Bokanon, the title is, What Can a Thoughtful Man Hope for Mankind on Earth, given the experience of the past 1,000,000 years? Now, boy, that's a provocative title, isn't it? And the main character in Cat's Cradle, he really wants to read that book, and he goes on a quest to find that book and to read it in the religion of Bokanon. And he finally finds it, he opens it up, it's a big, thick book, and on every single page is only one word, and that one word is nothing. What can a thoughtful man hope for mankind on earth given the experience of the past 1,000,000 years? Nothing. Sometimes we're de-hoped. Sometimes we think there's nothing to hope for. But think of Isaiah's prophecy. For out of Zion will go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. Then that great line that has existed throughout centuries, they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. In the gospel, you have to take it personal. A couple of weeks ago, Glenn and I were here and we did the Oktoberfest celebration. And Glenn and I, we stand regularly on frozen ground in a cold cemetery with people that we want to re-hope. And we say those words in the liturgy of the Evangelical Reformed Church, to the sure and certain hope of the resurrection to eternal life. Where do we find hope in those moments of grief? What does hope look like? It's an amazing thing that the prophet Isaiah said these words in about the year 600 BC. That there will be a time when there is no more war. And don't we get tired of hearing it over and over and solving our solutions with violence? Recently in our community we had an intellectual discussion about homelessness and what can be done about it. But there's a big difference between having an intellectual discussion about homelessness and having a mother and two little children sitting on your couch in your office with no place to go because they are homeless. How do you re-hope them? How do you give them hope? How is it when we send people again and again to find a job and we know there is no job for them, but yet they have to continue to go and apply and have their hope eroded of finding a good life? We struggle in our community to find proper mental health for people here. And our mental health services have been severely cut back. And there are people who desperately need it. There are people who need case managers. They need medicine. They can't find it. And I've sat with a lot of people who for years have struggled with mental health issues. And what is it for us to talk to them about hope? What is it when those of us have had physical problems and struggles with our knees or our thumb joints or some other part of our body that we've injured playing baseball? What does it mean to talk to them about hope and how the world can be different? Today, in this first Sunday of Advent, what does your hope look like? You have to answer that question because the world can quickly de-hope you. And how is it that we can keep those visions of the world that Isaiah saw in his imagination? That he saw in the mind of God? What about that vision that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. saw about peace and justice? He didn't think that it was going to happen immediately. He didn't think just by talking about it would happen. He gave us hope so that we would work for that vision that he had. And Isaiah was in the same place. Is there hope? Is there a place where you can work to re-hope people? The United Nations in New York City has a great big mural, and on that mural is this passage: to beat their swords into plowshares and to work for peace. So why do we do Advent? We do Advent so the world can hope with us. Now these are the gifts that you're going to be receiving this Advent season: hope, peace, love, and joy. And I don't want you to leave the Advent season without the gift of hope, because it might be the most important. Because if you don't begin with hope, and you don't have hope in your own personal situation, you won't strive for the greater gifts of love and joy and peace, because you won't think they're possible. And like all the messages that we have here inside the church, it's meant for the world outside the church. It's meant for a world that's short on hope, has been in fact de-hoped sometimes intentionally. And Martin Luther said, everything that is done in the world is done by hope. So this season, give someone the gift of hope. Help them to re-hope wherever they are. There is a world of need out there that needs